What's up everyone, Josh here and welcome to another video. Now today we're doing something just a little different. You may have noticed on this channel in the last month or two that the output has kind of gone down a little bit, but there's a good reason for that, I promise. And the reason is I'm actually right in the middle of recording an audiobook. That's right, an audiobook, something that I've been really interested in doing for a long time. And if you know me, you know that I'm a little crazy, and sometimes I just create these random voices for these characters that I have in my head and, try to bring them to life. Or sometimes, I'm just a really crazy old guy from Brooklyn and I can't understand you stupid kids. Or sometimes you just need a soothing, safe space. Whatever the case may be, I'm always coming up with these different profiles and characters and bringing them to life and having a good time with it. So being able to do a project like this, it's all of the above and it's been really wonderful. I've been working with an awesome author on this. The project is called Clean Up on Aisle 3 and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. The reason I'm doing this video is because when I tell people that I'm doing this, you'd be amazed at the amount of questions that come up. How did you do this? How did you even think of that? Or how do you overcome this challenge? We're gonna try to answer a lot of those questions in this vid. The second reason I'm making this video is if you are looking to do an audiobook or have someone do it for you, I'm gonna talk about some of the challenges that came up, expected and unexpected. I'm gonna talk about some of the techniques I've used, some of the plugins that I'm using, and try to give you a well-rounded picture of kind of how this all works so you'll have an edge when you do this for yourself. All right, let's talk about it. So let's talk about the book. This is Clean Up on Aisle 3 by Jordan O'Halloran, who happens to live in the same place that I come from, Lake County, California. So how cool is that? Not only an opportunity to support some homegrown talent from where I come from, but also to network and meet awesome people. Now, Jordan has been really awesome through this whole process. She has been giving me great creative input, helping me feel confident about what I'm doing on my end. Her crazy kind of matches mine, so we've been having all kinds of fun kind of bringing this thing to life, and it's been really, really great. I'd highly recommend this book to you or anyone else you can think of. It's a great story. It's not too long. I mean, this book's got it all. It's got murder, it's got kitty cats, it's got red convertibles, donuts. Ugh, what's not to love, right? So it's great. Shameless plug right here. But Jordan did a wonderful job in writing this, and I really love how this all came to life. There will be links in the description below to the physical, the Kindle version, and eventually the audiobook version with yours truly at the helm. We'll see how that goes. So there you have it. That's the book, and it's going to be great stuff.
Hi everyone, my name is Jordan O'Halloran. I am the writer of Clean Up on Aisle 3 that Josh gracefully accepted to read for me. This book took me 4 years to write, and I really hope that you enjoy it. It was, I wouldn't say fun to write, but definitely had its ups and downs. But if you ever want a signed copy from me, my social media handles are Jordan Josh Joy, and I will talk to you soon.
All right, let's talk about some things before we even get into the studio and start laying down tracks. What are some of the things that we need to do? Well, the first thing is you need to have a vision for this project. Understand that this is not like recording a 3 or 4 minute song where you know the parts and you just do it. This is going to be a 6 to 8 hour book, a full-on universe we're bringing to life. So understanding the author's vision and sharing yours with them and meeting in the middle is super important. And how we did this in this project is we had a few phone calls together, some creative meetings over the phone, if you will, and it was really great. What I encourage Jordan to do, and what I'd encourage you to do if you're going to have an author work with you, is have them explain their vision for not only the audiobook, but the universe that they have created. They've had all this time to sit with it and think of it, and having to actually articulate it to you kind of brings them back to square one. And then the other thing I did is I told her what came up for me as I read it and what I imagined these characters were going to be like and what I thought of the universe. What I'd encourage you to do as the narrator, as the recorder, is come up with your own goals and questions that you have and write them down. And it doesn't need to be this formal interview thing, but make sure that the author's aware that you're serious about getting it right. That'll go a long way in showing your commitment to the project. All right, before we talk about getting in there and laying down some tracks, let's think of some of the challenges that are going to come up right off the bat. For instance, the studio environment itself. What do you actually need? Do you need to have an isolation booth with the most expensive microphones and recording console available? You certainly don't, and I'll show you what I'm using in just a moment. There are other challenges you have to consider, like noise. How noisy is your room? What are the walls doing? If you live right by the train tracks like I do here in Montana and the damn train comes by and it ruins a take. It's happened many times. You've probably heard it in some of my other videos. Things like room noise, and how are you going to read a book and not get this in there? Some authors may like this for authenticity, but that's not what we were shooting for here. So we had to come up with some creative solutions for those things, and I'll show you what I did. All right, my friends, we got a different camera here. We're going to be doing a little studio tour, if you will. So there's all the guitars and such. And this is so important to just kind of customize your recording environment and make it yours. I mean, remember, you're going to be producing, 7 to 8 hours worth of material here, depending on the book you read. So we've got the project open in FL Studio, and then I sit in this little stool here with this mic right in front of me. And, obviously I adjust it as I need to, but I can look at the project and I control it with my wireless mouse, and I have another keyboard hooked in there so I can do things. And, you just hit record and then go down to your teleprompter app, and this is where I do all of my reading and stuff. So it actually works out pretty well. And then when I'm done, I just come back in here, I stop it and take a little break, and it works out really well. So nothing too fancy here. I don't have some fancy ISO booth or anything crazy like that, It works out pretty well. Like I said, just make sure it's comfortable. All right, in this next section, let me show you the computer side of things and what we're doing in the studio and how we're working with a few different programs to kind of bring this workspace to life and make it as efficient as possible. I think you'll like what you're going to see here. All right, my friends, here we are in the studio computer, and what I'm going to do is just go over some of the things that were really essential for me in just getting started and kind of getting the recording layout set. So the first thing I did was I got the Kindle version of this book, and I used this program called Calibri to convert it to a Word document, which ends up looking like this. Now, this is kind of zoomed out like crazy, but the reason I get it into a Word document is so that I can copy and paste all of the text that I need to into a teleprompter app. So this is a free teleprompter app online. This one is QPrompter, and there's two ways you can do this. You can make it larger, you can play it and have it scroll if you want to, but I prefer to have it a little smaller and kind of read them in chunks like this. So the first thing I do is I go through the text of the chapter, and I see about how much would fit on my screen from here to about here-ish, because I don't want it to be too crazy. So I'll say right about there is a good split, and then we'll do some more splitting, and basically, as many as you think you need to. And usually what I end up with is 10 to 15 of these chunks on my recording. So that keeps the sections manageable, and if I have to reshoot, I'm only reshooting this. I'm not reshooting the whole chapter at once, which would be pretty ridiculous, right? So that's kind of how we set that up. Then in the studio program, FL Studio 24, I'm just using that blue Yeti mic into the DAW, and I'm using a plugin called Front DAW here. And this is basically a preamp that gives the microphone just a little bit of a boost into the system. Now, what's really important is that you find what you like here and that you save it as a preset, or that you have a way to bring it up exactly the same every single time. Consistency is so important, my friends. I have the input up a little bit and the output down a little bit, and then I've got the mojo on this turned up just a touch. I'm using their German version on this Front DAW. And what I did is I took a preset from another one and just kind of tweaked it to make it what I wanted. So that is really important to have. So that sits on the recording channel. I arm it to record it. I record as a pattern and then basically hit record, play, go to my teleprompter, and then I'll start my recording. When I'm done reading, I'll stop the recording and then I'll name that file appropriately. You can see here we have the chapter 12 module. So I'm just renaming them chapter 12, 1, 2, 3, etc. and picking a color that corresponds. The reason I do that is because if you in FL Studio select all of these and you hit Alt-G, you can basically create your own little group. So I'll call this chapter 12. And now you'll notice up here, I've got all these different groups. So chapter 1, 2, 3, and so on. You could look at all of them if you wanted to, and you can see what we've done so far. It's pretty wild how many tracks are in this. I mean, compared to what we normally do, which is music stuff. Then you have your playlist. So your playlist is over here with all your tracks in it, right? So all sorts of tracks, and you can see that we've started to splice them together. And if I zoom in on this playlist a little bit, you can kind of see where these different sections are, these little splits. And that's where we've had to splice and cut and do the magic basically, so it's a seamless transition, excuse me. So what I'll show you now is the effects that I'm using to kind of get the voice how it's supposed to sound. So I have a preset file here, and it's my vocals mastering. You're gonna notice all these plugins start to pop in here. And we got a lot of fun stuff going on. So here is the breakdown of the plugins I'm using for post. Breath control to, get rid of the breathy stuff that you end up with. D-click to get rid of the mouth sounds that, that are gross and nobody likes. The denoise is the really important one, especially if you're not gonna use an isolation booth, because it takes some of that boominess and some of that other noise out of the room and kind of isolates the signal. Compression from, this is the V-Comp from Waves, and it's really good stuff. I'm using an EQ, and then I'm using a DS plugin here, Sibilance, and this one's from Waves as well. And decided that we liked the way it felt. Ben is 6'3", which makes him exactly a foot taller than me. He inherited his dad's thick, red flowing hair that reaches his shoulders. He's obsessed with Pez dispensers and loves peanut butter. Ben was diagnosed with autism at 6 years old when our teacher noticed he organized everything in the classroom by color, including everyone's backpacks. The autism thing is... So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we're using on the back end to make it sound as good as we can. And obviously when we go to full production, there's going to be some tweaks that we make here and there. Like I can already hear that it's a little too bassy and there's a little too much 100 hertz in the EQ and stuff, but that stuff we'll deal with as we go. Okay, so here's a little bit of a pro tip for you. When you're reading this stuff, it's not going to be perfect. You can practice it till the cows come home and think you got it, and then you don't got it, okay? Something happens when you actually start recording. So this is what I suggest. If you're recording and all of a sudden you really mess up do this. Clap into the microphone, and I'll show you why. All right, my friends, let me show you a little something here with the cuts and why I do the claps that I do. So you'll notice on this sound wave, which is one of the chunks we recorded, that there's these little spikes on there. You see these right here? These two spikes, those are clapping noises. And what we'll do here is we'll reset this to default so we don't have any latency, blah, 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 go away. So here's what you end up doing in production. I have no clue what part of the book this is.
Then I'm not lying. Mick says, not lying in action. Mick says, fine, we'll go through your safe. Listen now. Not lying and action.
Okay, so you can see that right here is where we left off, and then we had this little problem section. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this file right where I know it's still okay, and I'm gonna cut it right there and leave a little room. What that does is it gives me two different tracks to work with now, okay? So I am going to basically bring this back to where I know it was good.
You'll see that I'm not lying. Mick says,
and then I know that up here, and action. Mick says,
Fine. We'll go.
So I can get rid of this mix says right here.
And action.
Bring this back here. And then I can splice this together, and I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit more. And we want to make it as seamless as possible and natural as possible. So let's hear how this sounds.
See that I'm not lying. Mick says, fine, we'll go through your safe. Listen now though, I'm not allowed to do this, so this stays between all of us. So
there you go. That's how you do this whole thing. So you'll notice that some of these sound waves have got a lot of spikes in them. Like, you know, this one, we were having a little something going on. And then others are like, yo, no problem. So that's the fun of it. And that's how those claps can help you during your recording if you make a mistake. It's just something I came up with on the fly because I was tired of reshooting. So a little pro tip for you. Have fun with it. All right, so you're ready to dive into the recording and do this great project. Well, there's something to consider that you might not think of, and that is the consistency of your voice. We are dynamic creatures. We sound different when we wake up, after we've eaten something, when we're angry, when we're sad, etc. And our voices do change through the day. It's not a bad thing to have your character voice change a little bit and evolve through the book. That's not the problem. But you have to consider the quality of your voice at certain times of the day. I found for me that my best reading voice when I'm doing characters like this is in the morning after some coffee between about 7 and 9. And some of the changes are like this. I walked into his office and he sat there staring at me.
It's been a long time since I've seen you, Lucy. How have you been?
Well, I've been okay, but I've been thinking a lot about this. Chuck then walks in. Hey, Lucy, I haven't seen you in a while. How you been? Right? Whoa, there's a lot happening in very short amount of time, and that's a lot of work for your vocal cords. So understand that you are gonna have to plan this properly for your voice, for your characters, your universe, your story. Your mileage may vary, but that's what I found was really, really important. So something to consider. All right, let's talk about another thing, collaborating through the process with your author. This has been really important for this project, and I want to let you know kind of what we've been doing. Now, here's the thing to consider. If you're narrating this project, you know that it's going to take a little bit to do it. The author has spent all this time writing this book, and then they kind of hand it over to you and say, okay, let's create something. You get so excited and dive into your workflow, and then out of nowhere, your author's kind of sitting there going, okay, I haven't heard anything in a while. I hope that everything's okay. Is there anything I can do to help? You know, they start thinking about stuff. So do them a favor, keep them in the loop. Let them know, hey, I'm recording chapter 12 today. I'm recording chapter this today. Or if there's a question about the book as you go through it, reach out to them. They may not be available at the drop of a hat because they have lives too, but if it's important enough to where you know you're going to need to know something before you continue, be patient with them. Understand that they need to get back to you and have a chance to have that creative input before you just take off running and do something that you might regret later. So constant communication with your author through the process is really important. The next point is set boundaries for yourself between recording and producing. As you saw in the computer section there, we have two different styles. We're recording raw vocals, and then we have the produced vocals that are running through all the plugins and all of the stuff, right? Constantly switching back and forth between those, you're gonna have something change in the chain or the quality, and something is gonna be different, and it's gonna affect the rest of the project. You really don't wanna go there. So set boundaries with your author. They're going to be excited and want to hear it as it's going, but understand that at some point they're going to have to accept that you're in recording mode and they may not get something for a bit. So here's what I did. Here's the solution. I recorded the first few chapters for Jordan and I produced them and then I sent them to her. Not only did this give her something to be excited about, but it also gave her a chance to provide some creative input, which she did. And you know what? We changed one of the character voices because she was not feeling it as much as she wanted to be, and we worked on it together, and now we're in good shape. So doing that saved a lot of headache instead of giving her a 19-chapter book with the wrong voice, and then we'd have to address that somehow, and I don't know how that would have gone, right? So those are the kinds of things you can do to not only set boundaries with yourself and your author, but also keep them in the loop and give them a chance to have some input along the way. All right, let's talk about something you may not think of, and that is kind of decompressing from the stress and all of the tension that comes from reading, not only physically, because you're in a position where you're reading this whole thing, but also mentally. It's a lot to think about. When you dive into the world of an audiobook, you are creating a universe with your voice, and you are becoming those different characters. And it can be quite taxing. One thing you need to do is know yourself and where your limits are for that kind of thing. If your back starts hurting, if you notice that your throat starts to hurt, or if you feel like you're just not having a positive attitude towards the whole thing because you're getting frustrated, take a break. It's okay. Take a break, take a walk, get some fresh air. What I do after every audiobook session is I usually try to work out or go shovel the 50 million inches of snow every day we're getting here right now in Montana, and it really helps my brain kind of decompress. I reach out to Jordan and say, hey, we got this done. And maybe if I'm feeling really crazy, I give her a few voices just to kind of, bring her into things. And whatever works for you, do it. And make sure that you're not getting too cramped up in this and that you're not actually hurting yourself doing this production. It'll be there. You need to be your best when you do it. All right, my friends, that's kind of the wild world of recording an audiobook, and there's a lot to it, as you can see, a lot of little things you may not think about, or certain things that you just have to consider before you dive into a project of this size. It's a little different than music stuff, as we usually do on this channel. I really want to say thank you for all of the support as I've continued this little YouTube journey and making videos, and this opportunity was kind of a direct result of doing some of those videos and stuff. So every subscription, every like, every comment means the world to me, and it inspires me to keep going, and I'll keep you posted as this project continues. With that said, thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Hope you learned something about the audiobook world, or hope I inspired you to maybe do it yourself if you're looking at doing it. Until the next one, be blessed, and we'll see you guys later.